Hello and welcome to Optimize. We are delighted to have you here today. My name is Micheál McGrath. I'm the VP of Marketing here at VisibleThread, and I'd like to welcome everyone who has joined us here today from wherever you came from. We're delighted that you're spending a little bit of time with us, and we're very excited about today and tomorrow's events, and we're so thankful for everyone who's been involved. We've had a huge reaction to Optimize. We've had over 1,000 registrants, and we have 20 speakers involved over the course of the 2 days. And if you haven't seen Optimize before, it's completely virtual, it's completely free. It's going to be all on demand. You're going to get all the recordings afterwards. And this year's version is all about the RFP lifecycle. So our attempt over the next 2 days is to tackle all the phases of the RFP lifecycle. We've brought experts from multiple industries, multiple sectors to discuss everywhere from opportunity assessment or capture all the way to post-award. So we're extremely excited. I hope you are too. Today and tomorrow is your event as an attendee. We would love to make sure we're answering all the questions. So all our sessions are live. You have the ability to ask questions in the Q&A box. You also have the attendee chat that you can get involved in. I'll explain a little bit more as we go on. But yeah, we'd love to have your questions. We'd love to have your feedback. If you feel like you'd like us to go deeper into a topic, we're happy to do so as the sessions go on throughout the next 2 days. Everything, as I said, will be on demand and open access. So the first session today is going to be a discussion between myself and Allison. Allison Ritz is our Director of Product Marketing. Allison, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and thank everybody for joining this session. I'm looking forward to the sessions over the next couple of days. I know we have a lot of really great panels, a lot of great stories from the front lines, folks that are working in these different phases every day. And we're just really excited to get to connect with everyone.
Fabulous. And we're delighted. The opening discussion is to kind of look at an entry-level view into the RFP lifecycle to tackle every phase. We're going to discuss challenges. We're going to look at some innovation that we've seen from VisibleThread's perspective. We're delighted to have Allison here because Allison has expertise working with some of our largest clients across multiple sectors, from healthcare to defense to very large government agencies. Allison has worked hand in hand with people on multiple phases of the RFP lifecycle. And yeah, we're going to have a great discussion. So we're delighted to have you here today and to have Allison involved as well. Even just to get going, we have an opening poll. I'd just love to know who's new in the room. So Optimize is I suppose a labor of love for VisibleThread. We've done this event maybe 4 or 5 times over the last couple of years, and it's growing and growing and growing. So we'd love to know, this is actually a poll. You can click the slides, so you can actually select directly on the slides if you're new, or if this is your first webinar or first event, or have you been here before? So I can see people clicking the slides as we go. We'll wait till we get a decent majority of the people engaged and involved. Very good. So that's it. We've over 50 people selected there. So we'll move on to C. Okay, great. Okay, so we've nearly 2/3 of people have never seen us before, which is fabulous. It's great to have new people in the room. And I suppose from my perspective, just feel free to, this is an open event. It's free. You can share it with your colleagues. So the same way you registered, you're more than welcome to share the links internally. It's going to be on demand. You're going to receive all the slides and recordings almost straight away next week, so you'll get everything. So I understand it's a 2-day event. You don't have to be tied to the laptop or computer. You can. We're going to send you everything afterwards. The opening session and the context of Optimize this for the next 2 days is to tackle these 5 stages. So everything from opportunity assessment, where we're gathering intelligence, to understanding if we're business fit, all the way from capture, where we're identifying who's the capture team, implementing a plan, to that initial kind of, okay, we're going after this, what's the planning phase, who's the proposal team, identifying requirements, all the way to preparing, writing the proposal, and then afterwards, in terms of actually, okay, what's the post-mortem review? Did we win? Did we lose? What are the learnings from that? So we're going to try and tackle everything. And we actually have probably 2 or 3 sessions per phase across the entire section. So we're delighted to have as much feedback as we can, and we're excited. And myself and Allison, we're going to try and overview this life cycle today, talking about main challenges and activities. Is there a session with the group that we have right now, and it might even help me and Allison kind of have more of a detailed discussion on 1 or 2 of the phases. Is there any particular phase that you're most excited about? So again, this is an open poll. If you're willing to kind of click the slides, this will help us understand. Is there anywhere that you think you'd like more information, or what you're most excited for seeing from us today? And actually, I see people already kind of commenting in the attendee chat. Yeah, let us know where you're coming from. I'm coming from very, very sunny Cork in Ireland for once. So you'll get the accent. It's not always as sunny as it is right now, but yeah, we're loving the sunshine. And Allison, where are you coming from?
I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh, very good. Sunny there too?
It is, where we have a lovely sunny day, our last bit of sun before some rain for the next several days. So everybody's enjoying it.
Ah, fabulous. And we've one initial question just on recordings. Will the transcripts be available as well? We'll summarize the sessions for you, but all our sessions will be subtitled, and you'll have access to download those transcripts as well. So everything should be pretty easy to format afterwards. Okay, so here's an interesting one. So even an opening question, Allison, your thoughts on where people are spending the most of their time, or what they're most looking forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be indicative of probably the roles of some of the folks that are on the call. I know that we will be covering, I see proposal preparation, proposal planning are a big chunk of what we're seeing here. We're definitely covering kind of the plan and prep. We have sessions talking about strategy, talking about content creation, how to leverage technology in some of these areas. Really diving in and identifying requirements. And then additionally, if we're talking about opportunity assessment and capture, I think one of the biggest things, or the biggest things that I hear most frequently is, looking at from an alignment perspective, are we going after the correct opportunities? Are these the correct fit for our business? Can we win? And then ultimately, do we want to? Is this something that is strategically going to move us forward and help us hit our objectives? So we're going to talk about in these sessions, and then elaborate over, the sessions over the next 2 days. How can we help folks from an analytical perspective across the board? So from identifying fit and identifying alignment in the front end to making sure that we are hitting all of our marks from a compliance perspective, but then making sure we're keeping our responses customer-centric, focusing on the problem statements, focusing on tying that appropriately to our solutions, and preparing a proposal that is high quality, but also relevant to the customer needs.
Oh, great. And I do think this is indicative of where a lot of our customers sit. But it's interesting, there's more and more discussion about maybe like pre-opportunity phases, opportunity assessment. We see a lot of people, maybe they're using AI and automation to, improve some of the things further down the stream, and they're applying some of that time saved to above stream to making the right decisions up front. So I think we're going to have a really positive conversation as we work through the phases here, Allison. So I think that's really good. Just to what to expect, today is a 2-day event. It's running pretty much 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time across the next 2 days. All sessions recorded and shared afterwards. Registration is still open. You're more than welcome to share internally with your teams or externally on LinkedIn. We'd love the feedback on LinkedIn, and any summaries or any thoughts. We'd be more than happy to see what you think of our event. And finally, just from an initial starting point, thank you to all the expert speakers that have been involved. There's been a huge amount of prep and organization to get to this point, and I have no doubt that there's a lot of value in the next 2 days. So thank you to everyone. Over 60% of the audience is new this morning, which is fabulous. VisibleThread, just from an outside perspective, we are an AI and automation software for RFPs. We support 11 of the top 15 government contractors everywhere from small businesses to large enterprises, and across a number of different sectors. We have 2 flagship products, VT Docs and VT Writer. You're going to see a lot of that over the next couple of 2 days. You'll see some specific examples, but we're more than happy to help as time goes on. So if you have any specific question about VisibleThread, we have experts like Allison and some of our account executives on hand, that if you want to see the product or see a specific use case across any of the 5 phases that we're going to speak about, we're more than happy to do that over the next couple of days or next week or whenever suits you. And I'd like to just point out one resource. So Allison and the team at VisibleThread have put a considerable amount of effort into defining our product against our RFP lifecycle. So this downloadable is on the console. It's just underneath the slides. You'll be able to download it for free, and it'll break down the phases. So it's a little bit more detail of what me and Allison are going to discuss, and it's showing some real demonstrations and links to some videos that might support you and your team going forward. So feel free to download it, share it. If you have any comments or questions, we're always at hand to talk about it. Allison, before we get started, do you have anything additional you want to say?
Just that I want this session to be as interactive as possible. I know that we have folks that are interested in different phases. And so Mihal and I are having a bit of conversation here. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like us to elaborate on, or any specific things that pop up, please feel free to pop a question in the chat box, and we will try to answer as best as possible. So excited to get some feedback and interact with some folks this morning.
Fabulous. Well, look, without further ado, let's get straight into the first phase. We have a number of sessions today, just directly after this one, that will tackle some of these conversations in a kind of a deep understanding. But opportunity assessment, in a nutshell, is evaluating for fit and viability. So we're looking at leading into the no-go decisions. Is your business fit for this particular opportunity? Personally, we had a roundtable with some UK leaders a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of conversation about applying more budget, more resources to this phase, saving resources up front. And we know this can be a very tricky phase for organizations. We hear things like, we just go for everything. We only go for certain contracts. We'd love to diversify a little bit more. We hear pain from individuals and we hear pain from leaders. But Allison, do you have a summary of the kind of more common challenges that you've seen over your kind of history here with VisibleThread?
Yeah, absolutely. So really kind of just focusing on what are you trying to achieve? And I think that's the goal when we look at from a technology perspective. So what is the kind of problem statement, or what can we solve for here? So ultimately, what are we trying to achieve? In this phase is really a team is trying to make an informed strategic decision on, can we deliver? So can the business deliver on this contract, and would doing so be beneficial to the organization? So there's a lot of things that go into making that decision. Do we have the capabilities delivered? Do we have the past or qualifying performance to support our position? What's the likelihood that we would win, considering the competitors that we are assuming would be involved? Do we have relationships to leverage? All of those things go into this initial opportunity assessment. So this front end is really looking for fit and alignment. So is this an opportunity that we want to tackle? Do we have the resources to do so? And does it support our strategic initiatives or our business goals and futures? The challenges that we see are really in locating and managing that information. So being able to locate information from different sources, whether that's internally or externally, as well as, limited visibility perhaps at this phase into some of the requirements of the opportunity. Things are ever changing as far as this process is concerned. So relationships are still being leveraged here. Folks are still trying to shape RFPs or shape opportunities. So it is likely that things could change, and you haven't gotten a look at what a final solicitation would look like in most cases. So ultimately, we want to make a decision quickly in order to move forward into capture if this is something we want to pursue, or decide that this isn't something where we want to use our resources. So it's an excellent place to leverage analytical tools in order to make sure that we're making decisions quickly, but we're doing less of that from gut feeling and just kind of we think this is something that we're doing, or this seems like something that we want to do, and really grounding that in data as best possible.
Do you still hear phrases, Allison, like "we bid for everything," or we anytime a specific type of RFP comes out, we'll throw our name in the hat? It's kind of a wide attack all scenario. Is that still something that's quite relevant, and we've seen that still?
Yes. And so it all depends on the organization, that every organization is different. Different divisions or different business units within different organizations can be different as far as those things are concerned. You do see a broad approach in some places, but I think that we're seeing more and more of a strategic approach. So people are focusing more on where they're spending their resources, and technology is helping to manage some of that more effectively. But ultimately, yes, you do see that. Yes, certainly on specific types of opportunities or specific types of business. But I think that we're continuing to see more optimizing in this specific area, whereas opportunity assessment and deciding what RFPs were going to be pursued may have been very, very relationship based in the past. I think we are, data is entering that conversation in a much more, logical way.
No, well said. And it's really poignant, because we had this leadership roundtable 3 weeks ago, and one of the defense contractor, he mentioned about the bell curve of resources in Spain and spend he applies to his life cycle. And he spoke about normally the majority of their resources would have been in the proposal writing perspective, preparation, making sure that we have the quality of the proposal is as good as it possibly can do. They spend considerable amount of resources there. But due to, and it's going to be discussed a lot, due to automation, AI, maybe the team is better, due to more bringing in maybe higher expertise in that phase, it's allowed them to spread those resources into other areas. And one of those areas in particular, that bell curve is now shifting to where he's probably spending most of his resources in this phase. And looking at some of these activities that we're looking at right now, is there anywhere where you've seen particular innovation, or where you've seen people do things that have really moved them to a new level when it comes to opportunity assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what works is from a time perspective. So if we're looking at opportunity in the front end, and particularly I have a team that I've worked with where they have a fairly broad swath of opportunities. So yes, they have, a stronghold of things that are strategic and they're definitely going to do, but then there are a multitude of other things that are being considered or up for consideration. So in this front end, what they do is they have sort of a scoring space. So we're looking at, language and information and contractual pieces and all kinds of information that are kind of going to indicate this is a good fit for us. So basically optimize that process of what previously would have been a read through. So a read through of the opportunity and an identification of, okay, this is something that we think would be good, or something that I think would work, and moving on. So it's a time-consuming process to assess some of these opportunities in the front end. By automating that process and sort of automatically taking a look at this is the language that we know indicate that this is something that we want to pursue, or something that will be a good fit for us, or something that we have strong past performance for. Like, there are several markers there that qualify an opportunity. And then things that we definitely don't want to see, things that we can't deliver on, don't want to deliver on, aren't particularly profitable for us, areas where we've had issues in the past. So by automating some of that and running initial opportunity information through those types of cycles, you can get a real base for kind of creating a score in the sense of an opportunity score for this is something where we're seeing significant red flags. So you can qualify and disqualify opportunities, as well as really take a deeper look at the why and get past some of the emotion as far as the relationship piece is concerned. So it does give folks validation for why or why not they are advocating for, spending bid and proposal dollars.
Oh, wow, yeah. And when a lot of this, is it a phenomenal uplift to get to the point of automation? Or, like you mentioned earlier about internal resources and data management, and maybe like how clean does my SharePoint need to be able to do some automation around business fit against an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. So everybody, I don't want to say everybody, but most folks that have kind of delved into the process of leveraging some type of automation and accessing internal, files, that we do know that there are constraints around the structure of your information. So if it's very, very difficult for you to find anything manually, there is a likelihood that it would be equally difficult for, a platform, a Gen AI platform or an automation platform to find some of that information as well. So while there are certainly things that can be done as far as tagging is concerned, as far as structure is concerned and connectivity and all of that, what we can do in the meantime is take kind of small steps to that. So it's not a 100% or zero. So while, of course, there are challenges, and of course, everybody's in a technological transition as far as the accessibility to information, there are things that can be done in the front end. And not having the kind of broad picture of everything that's possible isn't always, it doesn't make it ineffective. So it's not an all or nothing proposition. So I think that ultimately you do have some setup to do, but referencing information and referencing the pieces of information that are useful in the front end can be very accessible for folks. So the way I look at it is it's automating. You could start with, okay, I want to automate what I would do manually. So what am I looking for? If I am just reading through and I'm making a determination on fit of a proposal, what am I referencing? What do I need to know to do that? And what types of things am I looking for? So if I saw something that was a red flag, what would that be? And if I can identify those things and then easily apply automation to them, then you can start there and then build.
Okay. Before we move on to the next piece, I see one question of, can we provide an example? So I'll pose that to you, Allison, but there's a video in the console where Allison spends about 4 to 5 minutes demoing an example of how to see if we're a business fit against an opportunity. But Allison, could you maybe, in a kind of a verbal fashion, maybe describe how you would automate qualifying for an opportunity?
Yeah, so I'll explain kind of what's in that example. And I used a real world VisibleThread example. So we have some documentation that we've created. And depending on the platform you're using, this is a VT Docs example, but used a dictionary, a search dictionary within VT Docs that contains language for a few different things. One is language, terms, phrases that indicate a good fit for us. So items that parts of our platform that we consider strong, things that we do well, and things that we are looking to do. So the type of contract where we would perform well, have good past performance, good alignment. There are also some contractual terms, some things that we want to be aware of, and then some items that are things that somebody who is looking for an RFP management software might be looking for, but we don't do. So it's important to flag those as well, because that might be an easy way for us to immediately disqualify or to understand that we're going to need more information on how important that might be to this customer. So ultimately, that allows us to really quickly take an RFI, take our document or our information on the opportunity, run it against these lists or run it against this set of information, and immediately highlight the red flags. So if I had multiple pieces, if I had RFI, if I had supporting documents, if I had, general inquiries and information, I can upload all of that documentation into VisibleThread. I can take my list set that shows, my green flags, red flags, potential issues, potential follow-up pieces, and generate a report or get a view really quickly of areas where we want to dig deeper and areas where we want to kind of do a little bit more research, or there may be things there, contractual clauses or specific delivery items that are non-negotiable, that would be an immediate disqualifier for us.
No, very good. Well said, Allison. And take a look at that demonstration that Allison did in the console. So take that through and save it for later. And if you'd like more information about it, or you'd like us to go in depth or show something else, we'll be happy to do so. But I want to take the time to just promote what we're going more on this topic. So me and Allison can only do so much in 5 to 10 minutes to discuss this topic. And I see a really good question from Jack about bias. And often when it comes to opportunity assessment, things can be quite historic in terms of it's just bias. We just do what we do and that's it. And my answer to that is data is the source, is the sword to breaking that down. You can have a gut feeling, or you can have resource issues, and you can have several different blockers towards why we shouldn't go after something. But if you can show it in data and visualize it well, that generally is the sword to break those things down. And we have some excellent conversations over the next kind of 3 hours. One is a panel discussion with Tom Wilson, what makes a good opportunity. So that's going to be really, knowing Tom, it's going to be very energetic, and it's going to be very kind of innovative, forthcoming. I think that's be a really insightful conversation. We're going to look at a no-go process with Kerry from Strategic Proposals. She's going to talk about removing bias in that conversation. And we're also going to look at different markets and shifts within markets. So moving away maybe from like process driven to more, okay, what does the industry look at right now? And looking at SLED and looking at market shifts. And that's with Kirsten from Summit Strategy. So these are 3 great sessions. If you can't get to them all, they're all going to be recorded. And yeah, but if you have any other further questions on this, we'll try our best to tackle them at the end of this conversation. But swiftly moving on, let's go to capture. And overviewing capture this is generally where a lot of organizations might attempt their no-go decision-making, where they might be turning kind of qualified opportunities into like more strategic pursuit plans. It's probably where they identify who is the capture team, what are the requirements involved. There's a number of different phases here. And you might have a dedicated capture team. It might flow into your BD team, or it might sit in your general proposal team or business development team. Capture can be very well defined, or it cannot be, and that can be a challenge in itself. Allison, would you mind doing a quick overview of capture and the challenges that you've seen over the last few years?
Yeah. So ultimately, capture is kind of where the decision is made. So the decision is made, are we going to invest the resources, and are we going to move on and create a formal proposal for this, or formal proposal plan? So we're taking everything that we learned during the opportunity assessment phase. The opportunity's been qualified. We do think that it's viable. So how are we going to win? So we know that we can do this, but do we need to shape our solution to meet the ask, or is this something we can do now? Do we have work to do? Do we have partnering that we need to do? What relationships do we have to leverage with the customer and potential partners? Do we really understand our competition and where our solution fits in? Do we have the differentiators? What is our win strategy? And by the end of the phase, we need to not only understand the opportunity, but we need to have strategically positioned ourselves to maximize our profitability of winning. So the challenge there, again, is really looking at the data that we have available. So leveraging the data that we have available and taking a critical look at our resources, what we can deliver, and our position in the market. So here we are really going to be digging into past performance and qualifying performance, and then starting to create create a capture plan and outline what would be our strategy and kind of outline our executive summary. So define the win strategy. So ultimately here, we're going to define what's going to happen in proposals. So what proposals will do to support and create content that solidifies the strategy that we've developed. So understanding the opportunities, really making sure that our strategy is tied to requirements and tied to the customer problem. So deeply understanding the customer problem and the problem statement, and creating or delivering an offering that speaks to that. So what is the benefit and why are we the choice? Not necessarily this is what we can do, why you should choose us. And that has to be determined here. Sometimes there can be difficulty like articulating some of those differentiators, making sure we're leveraging the strongest past performance, and making sure that the content that we're creating is clear for proposals, our win strategy and our statements are clear. So I think that's pretty universal across the board. You also have some time constraints depending on the size of the organization, depending on how strategic the pursuit can be. So there's a lot of things that have to happen here. And this is kind of where the rubber hits the road in the sense of you have to make a decision on whether you're moving forward and this is a good fit.
Fabulous, Allison. And that the last point there, strategy is not tied to actual requirements. Mm-hmm. Is that a common, how common is that in terms of, is that a blocker due to the amount of time it takes to pull out the requirements from the draft, or is it just aligning who is the right person to answer these questions or fill in the questionnaire? Is it more of an internal thing, or is it more of a resource kind of management thing?
I think a lot of times it is strategy based on what a company does well, not what the customer is asking them to do. Okay. So if I have an RFP from a customer and I know that I've delivered X product in the past in a successful way that looked like A, B, and C. So this is the strategy I used. We won, and that was great. That's the strategy I'm laying out, rather than really looking what the customer need is, understanding the problem statement and their requirements, and tailoring what I'm doing to that. So I think that's where the first kind of kink in the chain happens, that if we're laying out a strategy based on our strengths, not the customer needs, then the story that we're telling is not going to hit the mark.
Yeah, well answered, Allison. And from an activity perspective on a capture side, is there any particular activities that stand out to you? Like, could you describe a little bit about the main activities and innovation that you see in the capture side?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things that people are doing from an informational perspective and are similar to what you'll see in opportunity identification, but here it's more validation. And you're also going to have more information on the requirements. So you're getting a more formal view of what the requirements will be. So continuing to validate differentiators and continuing to validate your win themes and your plan. So ultimately, this is how we think we're going to win. And as we go through the process from capture into proposal, it's continuing to validate and solidify that this is the correct approach. So ultimately, it's visibility. So visibility for everybody in collaboration within that process, and making sure that during these kind of identifications of the teams that are going to be involved and everybody else that's going to be a part of this process, that information is flowing from one person to the next. And that's something that can be referenced. So if I am going to create content, so if I'm creating content for the capture plan, making sure that I can reference all of the information. So it is having well-managed SharePoint folders, or wherever your resource folders will be connected to, say, an LLM, where you're pulling that information to help you create summaries, content plans, assess positioning. If all of that is really well managed and all of that is accessible, you're going to have visibility for everybody, as well as the the most relevant source for your content. So I think that is the goal with folks that are leveraging Gen AI and leveraging some of their tools to help to create content, and not just content generation, but idea generation. So understanding where things stand from a competitive perspective, understanding what you're looking at from a solution perspective, that being able to access documents and access source information to pull from grounds all of that content and grounds everything that you're creating and considering in data. So I think that that's a way that folks are making sure that even from the front end, they are leveraging technology appropriately and accessing all their resources.
No, that's a good final points there, because I think with this phase in particular, there is a lot of applications for whether it's automation or technology or AI. And I suppose it's finding the right use cases and the right technology to fit the right purposes. You said a few things there that I thought were specifically interesting. Grounding in your own source information. So being able to create capture plans that align to that aren't just generic AI generative prompting things, create me a capture plan. It needs to be grounded in your own information. And also there's probably in certain aspects, like where it's identifying requirements, or where you're, like you mentioned previously about tying the requirements to strategy, that has to be there's an accuracy issue there. You need to make sure that the requirements you are putting are 100% accurate, and that you're not hallucinating, or you're not allowing something to give you an almost good answer. You need perfection in that sense. Do you have any kind of tips and tricks to people in a capture role that, okay, how can I use technology, but what guardrails would you put in place for people?
Yeah, I would say that the rule applies in all sort of aspects, because definitely in capture and opportunity identification, you can use platforms that are going to help with competitive analysis in a more real-time way. So we use platforms like that here at VisibleThread. So external pieces where we're looking for market information, we're looking up-to-date information, and giving scenarios and deep diving into specific pieces. Now, I always say you look at those things as a starting point, not an ending point. You also look at them as, I say, part of a collaborative conversation. So they are good ideas, good things to bring to meetings, to team reviews, but they're not kind of be-all, end-all insights. So I think that it's important that when we're getting down to making decisions, so making final decisions on solutions, offerings, and go, no-go decisions, it's important to ground that in data. So use a kind of a selection of technology, things that are going to generate content and give you information and ideas. Again, if you can reference your files and reference the information you've collected so far, that's better, because then you can make sure that you have referenceable data in the content that you're creating. But then using software or using an analytical process that does give you kind of deterministic answers on, one-to-one, are these things there? Do we have gaps? Are there specific things that we're looking for that we can't do? Or do we have red flags? All those kind of things to make sure that you're double checking. So I think it's just a trust but verify when you're talking about some of the generative pieces.
Fabulous. And let's just move slightly on, and the conversation on capture is going to go on right up until just after lunchtime. I want to highlight the first session, which is a panel discussion with Chickasaw Industries and BTW and Co. Chickasaw Industries Chickasaw Nation Industries are a customer of VisibleThread. Steve Skelton is a capture manager at Chickasaw, and he's going to speak with Marcia about processes in the capture world, about, I suppose, innovation. He's going to speak about technology. There's certainly going to be conversation about the application of VisibleThread. If that is going to be a really informative, if you're looking to kind of move your capture side of the house onto another level, I think there's going to be some really good learnings there. Kyle Peterson follows that session from a VisibleThread perspective about closing the loop there. So he's going to look at lessons like post-award, lessons that we've learned from the past, and applying those lessons to future opportunities. So go, no-go strategies. He's going to look about using data to make the right decisions. He's going to look about how to make accurate decisions. And there's also some use cases there about generative AI to save you a lot of time, maybe creating first drafts, helping you with capture, planning, etc. So there's a number of different use cases there that I think you might find very interesting. Before we move on to proposal planning, Allison, do you have any final thoughts on capture?
No final thoughts. I think that the sessions will be really good to show folks how the tech can be applied, and then really just talking about, the decision on that, and then the front end session on kind of what makes a good opportunity and how to qualify, I think will be really helpful.
Fabulous. Okay, well, this is the session these are the kind of the sessions that most people kind of align themselves to at the start of today's conversation. So when it comes to proposal planning, after we make the decision that we're actually going to go after this opportunity, it's aligning the cross-functional teams, it's breaking down the requirements, it's how do we create a strong, quality, customer-focused response. These are, I suppose, the keywords that we hear all the time: customer focus, quality, making sure we're applying to all requirements, making sure that our cross-functional teams are aligned. So these are kind of the themes that we often talk about from a VisibleThread perspective. And we have lots of great speakers coming up this afternoon to kind of dig into some of the challenges. But from an overview perspective, Allison, do you want to go through some of the challenges that we commonly see?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenges that we see in the planning phases or in the front end of the proposal process are related to time and lack of automation. So if you have, if it's a handoff, it's a relay race, that nothing can happen until the requirements are identified. Requirements, risk, delivery items, what's the scope of the solution, and all of that is broken down. A manual process, and the more complicated the solicitation, the longer that process takes. Everyone else is kind of waiting. So if you have a finite window of 30 days, that number just keeps going down. So the amount of time that you can spend on quality and relevance and, structure and content gets smaller. So I think that is the biggest change that we have: bandwidth and just time to identify these things. Additionally, you have, risk of human error there if we're managing things that way. And then, ultimately just making sure that we are staying true to what's been identified. So Capture has identified our win strategy, and making sure that we're staying true to that and validating requirements. So if we're getting a draft or if we're getting a final RFP, if we have any sort of changes or to requirements, that we're identifying those quickly, and we are making an overall assessment to what has changed. I think a lot of times what you see, and I know that sometimes proposal folks don't have much say in this, but you may have a change in scope, you may have a change in opportunity as you get into this process, and we're still kind of pushing forward with the same plan, whereas it may be best to do some level of reassessment of the viability of the opportunity or of our approach. So I know that that can be a challenge for folks as well. Here, essentially, there's a ton of work to do and a short amount of time to do it. So the more we can optimize, the better.
And we see a consultant in the attendee chat speaking about organizations coming with 2 days prep to do this phase. And a lot of proposal people who love this industry feel like this is the phase that wins or loses it. It's the prep that you put in, it's getting customer language right, it's doing the analysis on the requirements, etc. And this is where you hear themes like burnout, and you hear unhappiness in teams and layoffs, and you hear about people moving jobs more regularly due to these kind of things, this tends to be the area where organizations probably let their people down a little bit more. Allison, there's so much we could talk about here, and we will do.
Yeah.
But if you could summarize, maybe there's a few areas where you feel that, okay, what are some key activities that can save people time? What are in this phase in particular?
Yeah, I mean, the key things are applying automation to the deconstruction of the proposal. So getting rid of that manual process. So getting rid of the manual process, but doing this in a way that is going to be accurate. Ultimately, a miss, and everybody knows it, that being non-compliant or a miss can, sink the entire thing. So we don't want to get speed and lose quality or lose accuracy. So accurately identifying with automation is a huge win. Being able to deconstruct and assess the solicitations in a quick way and move to action more quickly, assign out responsibility more quickly, raise a red flag on issues more quickly is the best thing that you can do to help move this forward. Additionally, being able to make sure that what we are addressing and that we are seeing is sticking to our overall goals. So making sure that we're staying true to our win themes, making sure that we're staying true to the solution and the offering that we have in mind. So validating quality as we continue through this process. But I think reacting quickly, identifying requirements, identifying material changes, and being able to automate that process gives back much more time for analysis.
No, well said. And there's going to be a lot of conversation about the planning side of proposals over the day. And that will bring us right to the end of today in terms of the agenda. Our last two sessions, first of all, Rachel Charlton, she's going to speak a lot about the customer language, how to make your proposal more appealing, more compelling, but also hitting those requirement factors that we need to hit. Karen from WPS is going to tackle from a VisibleThread perspective. Karen is a user and a customer from a couple of organizations, but now in WPS. And she's doing an interview with Kyle Peterson, our VP of Customer Success, and they're going to speak about VisibleThread's application to this phase. So how to put out requirements, how to do a compliance matrix, where I can support you here, how to pull out specific themes, making sure that we're hitting the right messaging, and is there anything from our past history that we can use as a baseline here? Can we source any documents from the past that we can use as a baseline? So there's going to be some really interesting discussion towards the end of today on this phase in particular. Allison, any final words on this side? No,
I think we'll lead right into proposal preparation.
Yeah, we are moving quick, Allison, to try and get through this. But yeah, I hope this is providing a good summary of a kind of a good intro to today's conversation. So from a proposal preparation perspective, now we're into writing, and there's going to be huge conversation about the ability of Gen AI here and what it can do to kind of support you from a copywriting and editing perspective, pulling from your own source materials, etc. There's loads that we can do here. But how do we make sure that we're compelling, compliant, and competitive? This phase is, if you're a proposal writer, I do think people tend to love this phase, and they tend to really be passionate about the work that they're doing here. So I'm excited about some of the sessions that we have here tomorrow morning. And yeah, I know, Allison, you have a great session here too, but we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. From a challenge perspective, could you outline some of the key challenges here, Allison?
Yeah, I think that the challenges all come in really with putting it all together. So you have multiple contributors, you have subject matter experts, and we're looking to make sure that the messaging and tone stays the same throughout, that we're adhering to quality standards, that we're adhering to, company style guides, and we don't have gaps, and we're staying true back when we were talking about, capture and really critically understanding the problem of the customer. here is where we put that into action. So in our writing, we have to be customer centric. We have to make sure that we're not just talking about what we do well. We're talking about why what we do well will solve the customer problem specifically. So ultimately, I think the biggest challenge is when you're dealing with multi-contributor responses, you have a lot of different pieces of the puzzle, and bringing that all together into a cohesive proposal can be a challenge. As well as the time when we're looking at reviews, making sure we don't have any gaps, making sure we don't have any misses. So you have a little bit of everything here. We're actually producing our proposal, and then we are managing quality and making sure that the plan that Capture put in place has stayed true throughout, making sure we don't have any changes that would adjust that, and then producing quality content that's relevant to the customer.
And I'm excited for the sessions that are going to happen today, because we're going to look at some real examples. We're going to look at some prompting examples. We're going to look at some real use cases, and we're going to talk about tone of voice and some really interesting things from a proposal writing perspective, which I'm quite excited about. From key activities, and I know there's so much here, Allison, we could talk about, and it's probably worth highlighting. I know you're doing a session tomorrow where you're going to do some deep dives into this kind of stuff. Would you like to kind of just do a little summary of this slide and you know, a story that you'd like to share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at validation, I think that here you're producing, but so much of preparing and assessing the proposal is validating. So all of the work that's been done, the work that's been done in Capture, the work that's been done in planning, here we are, you know, that's coming to fruition, but we're validating all of that at this time. So making sure that all of that comes through in our writing, that when presented, the story that we planned on telling, we're actually telling, and it's coming across in an effective way. But I think that from an optimization perspective, there are a ton of things that we can do here, you know, leveraging generative AI to create first draft content and get folks off the blank page. Being able to leverage quality standards, so making sure that our multi-contributor responses are adhering to the same quality standards across the board, being able to automate things like gap and compliance assessment, make sure we're compliant, make sure we don't have gaps between the solicitation documents and our response, really look at making sure that we don't have any misses, assessing acronyms, assessing changes, and just using some of these deterministic search methods to get a one-to-one answer on gaps, compliance, changes in amendments, changes to our solicitation. So there are a lot of things that we can automate for here that attack in kind of two different ways. One are to eliminate manual processes and give you more time for review and quality. The other are to help with some of those jumping off points and revision points with the content that you're creating, again, so you can focus as much time as possible on making sure that everything is relevant and compliant.
Yeah, and we have so much to discuss today or tomorrow, in particular on those topics. But if there's anything that like we're speaking about that you'd like more detail, obviously we're more than happy to take it offline and have a conversation on the side. And I can see some questions about specific use cases popping up. Throughout today, so tomorrow morning or tomorrow kind of afternoon-ish, we have a plethora of conversations about this. Talking about from perfect pitching in terms of oral presentations to how to write a good executive summary to achieving quality with automation, even choosing the right tools. There's a huge amount of content tomorrow morning around this side of the house. Our last piece, because I want to be respectful of people's time and make sure that we give a chance for a break between the next session. But post-award, Allison, would you mind doing a quick summary of post-award and some of the challenges that you see?
Yeah, the challenges that, I mean, obviously there can be follow-up questions, and you may be doing best and final and some other things there. But if we're talking about, you know, everything is signed, sealed, delivered, really it's what did we do well? What do we need to change, or what would we not do again? And how can we apply those lessons? I think that lessons learned are such a crucial part of the postmortem challenge. I know Kyle has a session talking about then actually applying them on the front end, but certainly and most definitely, if you have access afterwards to scoring or feedback information, taking that feedback and then going back in and looking at your proposal. So the same assessments that we did in the front end from a compliance perspective, from a gap perspective, from a thematic alignment perspective, looking at those once you know how well you did to see where you missed the mark, or where you could have, or where there are things that you might want to repeat in the future. So there are a lot of ways you can take away this information. Also, there are many additional processes involved, but for the sake of time, just focused on the kind of information gathering piece, because there is a crucial amount of information to be learned that can be applied to optimize your process in the future.
Makes total sense. And just to highlight some of the sessions later, Marsha Watson from BTW is a former user, and there's some more users on that conversation as well. They're going to talk about using past performance to restructure your future bids. So it's going to be a really energetic conversation tomorrow afternoon. Marsha has a huge amount of clients across a number of different sectors. There's going to be some real valuable assets there. And from what Allison said there, Kyle Peterson, our VP of Customer Success, is going to look at some customer examples, demoing in the VisibleThread products, exactly how you can optimize some of your post-award activities, making sure that you're not missing any requirements, you're learning from past mistakes, you're avoiding future issues. And we have some really good examples from customers to share on that session. We're tight in time, Allison, but have you any final words for the group?
No, I mean, just thank you everybody for joining us. I know that today we just did kind of a quick overview of the different phases, but ultimately we want the sessions, and the reason we structured things this way were to make sure that the sessions were grounded in sort of real world scenarios for you. So we're going through all of the phases, and some of the challenges that we talked about will be tackled in some of these sessions. There are a ton of opportunities to ask questions, a lot of feedback, and like Mihal said, we have the resources in the console. We'll have additional resources coming in the coming weeks, and there are a lot of different ways that you can interact with us in the future. But I know that we have a lot of people on the docket for today and tomorrow, and a multitude of things that we discussed in this quick overview will be shown in more detail. So a lot of great opportunities to learn more, get some takeaways and some resources.
Fabulous. So thank you so much for your time on this session. I hope it was a good introductory and a kind of a little step into the conversations that we're going to have over the next 2 days. Allison, thank you for your time and your expertise here. Our next session is with Tom Wilson and Aaron Tilcock. This is going to be all about opportunity assessment and what makes a good opportunity. So, and this is going to be, just to give a little bit of a lay of the land for future sessions. Once this session ends, you'll be automatically redirected to the next session. So you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to click anything. If you want to stay for Tom Wilson's session or the next session, you just stay on this link and it's going to automatically redirect you over there. At any point today, if you want to come back to us, go to our Optimize 25 landing page where you registered, or where you've got the links this morning via email. There, if you didn't receive them, they might be in your spam folders. But you would have received an email from them this morning. You can go to the VisibleThread Optimize 25 page, and all the live links are available there. You'll be able to join any session once it's live. All the recordings will be available on that page also. So if you'd like to stick around and you'd like to go to Tom's session, stay on the stream and you're going to be redirected over there in the next few moments. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, everybody.